Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Austin Petersen here, former presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, and today is Thursday, January the 5th, 2017. Happy New Year's. Thank you very much for tuning in to my live stream. Tonight I have a very special guest. His name is Daniel Zolnikov. He's a liberty-minded Republican representing Billings House District 45 in the Montana legislature. He's a strong believer in gun rights, civil rights concerning our freedoms and liberties, and limited government, and is working to make Montana the last best place for future generations through a stronger job environment, economic freedom, and a simplified tax code. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and it's always exciting to talk to new up-and-comers, people who are interested in the same ideas that we are over here at the Libertarian Republic. That's economic freedom and personal liberty, and we especially like the rebels. We're big fans of people who can get elected, who believe in the same things we do, because it's very rare to have someone who shares our ideas, and it looks like you're really starting to make a big fuss out there. It looks like a lot of people are paying attention to your message, and there is a potential special election coming up where you might even be able to attain higher office on par with liberty-minded Republicans such as Thomas Massie, Justin Amash, and others in Congress. So congratulations on your previous victory, and we're going to talk about your hopeful upcoming victory here later on in the show.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a three election journey. So I just got my last election. It was great victory, 69% in Billings area. So that's not too bad. I can't complain. I did have a pretty dirty primary because apparently some people don't like my liberty politics, but what do you do?
Yeah, well, I know a thing or two about dirty primaries, I'll tell you. But let's try to stick to the good stuff up front before we get to the bad stuff. The first thing that I really want to talk about is something that stuck out when I was reading a profile in Reason magazine about you, is that you're really strong on the Fourth Amendment, talking about things like due process and privacy. Obviously, this is a big issue of concern to not just libertarians, but for civil liberty-minded Democrats and civil liberty-minded Republicans. And so my question is to you is, what do you see the role of the government in terms of balancing liberty and security?
I believe that, especially with our national precedents of history, that liberty will always overcome security. I mean, every country that they've given up their ability, their freedom of speech and what's being heard and said is being recorded, it always ends disastrously. And the example I always use is the Stasi, which is East Germany, and how they could tap the entire country. Well, they only had 40 phones, but they held an entire country basically at ransom, and they got everybody to self-censor their thoughts, ideas, and ability to basically fight that corrupt government. It's amazing what we have learned and seen in our own last 50, 60 years of history with due process, and no one even wants to talk about it anymore. So it's a big deal to me. My first session at 25, I passed a bill. Well, I was sworn at 25. At 26, I passed a bill that said you need a warrant for your location on your phone. Well, apparently I got a black helicopter award my first session for that because there's a conspiracy theory. It got passed into law though. It got into law, and then Snowden happened. And then pretty soon it was a big deal because it was the first privacy law of its type in the country. And so that kind of started the floodgates.
What are your thoughts on Edward Snowden, by the way?
Oh, I love Edward Snowden.
Mm-hmm.
Just blink a
you don't, so he's not a traitor to you?
No, I'm not going to do the political thing. Be like, well, I mean, yeah, anybody could have, I don't know the situation. Russia, I got a Russian background. I don't know if that's the best route, but you know what? I don't know the story. I'm glad we did. I'm glad he told the secrets of what they were doing, because that's not appropriate. Do you know that Snowden's leaks forwarded encryption 7 years? It's awesome.
No, I did not.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Maybe you're the guy that hacked the DNC, huh?
Yeah, I'm not good at programming, I'll be honest. I did speak at DEF CON though, so yeah, I like hackers. I can respect them.
All right. Well, you say you like Snowden, and I mean, are you uncomfortable at all with the idea that Russia might have interfered with our elections?
I don't know if they did. I don't believe they did. Of course, I don't want any country interfering with our elections. I just find it ironic because we've interfered with every other country's elections at some point. I mean, I don't know. Name a country we have not interfered with their elections. Maybe Britain at some point, but every country we've interfered with every election in the world.
One of the things I really love is that whenever the United States goes abroad and starts setting up governments, willy-nilly, one of the things that they do is they're like, well, you need to have lots of parties included in this process, but we don't quite have that here in the United States,
And that's
except
what
for
kind of
here.
drives me crazy. Exactly. That's why, if you would have got the nod, I would have been endorsing you. I was the first, I guess, elected Republican in the country to endorse somebody, to endorse Johnson, and it would have been you as well, because I want somebody who I can, I guess, I did not want Trump. I put it that way. I was not excited about that.
That's pretty brave. There's a special election coming up in which you might be throwing your name in the hat if the current sitting Congressman Ryan Zink is elected to Secretary of the Interior under the Trump administration. Do you think that your endorsement of a third-party candidate might hurt your chances of taking that seat?
There is always that possibility, especially since it's only the main, there's about 200, I think, or so electors in the state. There's that chance, but also I have an extremely conservative, liberty-minded, small government voting record, it's good in Montana to have that. So you got to balance them both out. Right now, we got another month or so until we figure out really what's happening. So we got to see what other candidates step up.
What are you doing to try and win that seat? How are you going out there and winning the hearts and minds?
Well, right now, it's just again, people are just putting their names out there. We just started the session, so it is get your name out there and get to figure out where the central committee people are, who they're going for right now. That's the big one. It's an easy stepping process. Next is the party. You pay basically a certain amount for the party, and then you get the list of who the votes actually are. You start to solicit those votes. So it's the beginning stages.
Are you optimistic for the Trump presidency? I mean, he seems to have some policies that libertarians look at and we kind of go, oh, that's interesting. And some of the cabinet picks he's mentioned, perhaps Secretary of Defense James Mattis, maybe a little bit more in line with people who believe in a strong national security, but one that doesn't go abroad in search of monsters to slay always. So what do you think about the upcoming Trump administration? I guess, are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic?
I thought he actually has had some pretty good choices, which has been optimistic. Again, though, the bar was a little bit low, so I wasn't sure what to expect, at least out of him. But so far, the choices are good, except I don't really like the AG, and I could be wrong, but he seems pretty statist, put it that way. So Sessions.
That's quite a word for a Republican to be throwing around, Daniel.
I'm in Montana. You should visit. It's kind of how we think, I think.
I'd love to. Go ahead.
I met once I was at a meeting. I was talking to a guy from Homeland Security, and he's like, we had this program that Montana didn't do, but it was to help identify possible terrorists by what pictures they were taking of different facilities and stuff. And I was like, yeah, you know what? The people that you are worried about, if the people that do not like what you're doing and who come out very angry against the government, those are some of the people who are my constituents. So by you losing that was probably better for your own safety, kind of thing. Like when you start imposing programs that are starting to identify different people as possible threats because they're country boys in the hills of Montana, the government's the threat to them. There is no bigger threat. So I kind of told that Homeland Security guy, yeah, that was probably good that program didn't get put into Montana.
Yeah. One of the things that I have when I'm having debates with conservatives who are always talking about national security, and many of them praise Donald Trump when he says we need to place a blanket ban on Muslims coming from countries where terrorism is prevalent. And, we have this big discussion about the wall and the border. Of course, in Montana, I'm pretty sure that your chances of getting run over by a buffalo are much greater than getting killed in a terrorist attack. But what do you think when you hear people talk about that in regards to national security? I mean, is there a role for blocking people from terrorist countries? I mean, what is your idea of a good national security policy?
It's a numbers game. It's actually my solution. I have not heard it, but it's not that crazy. So there's only so many refugee spots in this country, right? There's a limited number, and there are tens of millions of refugees. My father was actually considered a refugee when he came to this country. So what do? Do you select the refugees from possible dangerous countries, or do you select them from safer ones like the Sudan, which has been in a horrible situation for decades now? Why would we do this new crisis when there are old crises that we know are safer? And we could a life is a life, right? Or is one life from one country more important than another? We could bring in the same amount and get rid of the safety factor, and that way everybody wins. And maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but that seems the easiest way to satisfy everything. But the whole thing, the argument isn't about a solution. Arguments in politics are about getting people on one side or the other. That's politics. It's
one of the problems that we have in this country is how egregious the process of immigrating to the United States is. In some cases, it can take 15 to 25 years for someone to become a citizen of the United States. And what are your thoughts on America's current immigration policy? Are you more towards we need to have a simpler process, or do you think we need to build the wall?
So one thing I've heard about the immigration status is the quotas. There are certain amounts to basically match, because if we have 200 million people come in, that's not going to really fit our economy right now. And that illegal immigrants, or however you want to say it, do come in and they take up the quota of legal, so the legal is limited. So there's the imbalance there. I know, and I've traveled Eastern Europe and Europe, like there are people all over who are highly educated and sit in countries across the globe who want to come here, and our quota system is limiting them. So I am a firm believer of, if people who have no opportunities but they're gonna add value, then get them here, speed it up. Especially since if you look at, I think the stats, like it's been a little while, but immigrants tend to be very good entrepreneurs. It's just they see the opportunity they have here that they never had, and they go after it, and that's a beautiful thing. I don't know if I fully answered your question. I kind of went in circles, but.
Well, just to address one of the things that you brought up, the way that the free market economists describe this is that, even if you had 200 million people trying to immigrate to the United States, let's say all 200 million of them got into the country, there might be a jarring effect initially, but what would happen is that the laws of supply and demand would make it so that people would either have jobs or they wouldn't. And in many cases, what will happen is, like, for example, in 2007, when the American economy contracted, we actually had a net negative immigration from Mexico, where actually more people were leaving from the United States to Mexico just because there weren't enough jobs. So it's kind of like the question of central planning it applies to immigration as much as it does something like, a commodity like gold, right? Labor being is something of a commodity. It's a form of wealth. So some people say, well, you can't go back to a gold standard because there's not enough gold. Well, there's enough gold. The question is how much does the gold cost? And it's sort of the same argument that's applied to immigration, but we can debate all this boring, wonky stuff all the time.
I think you're right. The one thing that I think is the main point on how that we can't just have a flowing system is entitlements, and that the fact that they can be signed up for. So now the incentive isn't a free market with employment and what opportunities are available. It's also what can be leveraged from the country, and that's where things get a little. That's where there's a problem. If people can sign up for things for free, then there's no competition for jobs. And
let me challenge you on that for just a second, because wouldn't that technically mean that illegal immigration would be superior? Because then if they come here illegally, then they qualify for those benefits, right? They're not. But what will happen, I see in many of these states, is that illegal immigrants, if they come in, if they have an income tax versus like a sales tax, for example, or a property tax, is that many times what will happen is that illegal immigrants will pay into the system, Medicare, Medicaid, and they can have budget surpluses in many of these states, but they don't collect because they use fake social security numbers. So under that scenario, wouldn't that mean that illegal immigration would technically be superior?
I actually have the opposite. I thought it was the fact that they can collect and get health benefits and do that without the social security number. That's what the incentive is. And again, I work more on my state. We don't really have these problems, and I work more on energy policy. So there could be misconceptions too, but I thought that there is actually the ability to get a lot of benefits without even having a social security number.
It goes on a state-by-state basis. I mean, California, they can. I bet in Montana, they probably cannot. But what everybody can always get are the emergency Medicaid benefits. So, for example, if you walk, just like anybody, if you walk into an emergency room and you're bleeding from a gunshot wound, they're required to treat you, whether you're an illegal immigrant or not. It just doesn't matter. So I think that's kind of the crux of what it is. But let's talk about energy policy for a moment. I know that Montana is an energy state. I know that this is the big issue amongst your voters. So my question is what do you think about, this is the political question first, and we'll talk about the economics. What do you think about Rick Perry as the potential head of the Department of Energy? The guy couldn't even remember what it was called in a debate with Ron Paul. He couldn't name it. What do you think about Rick Perry as head of the Secretary of Energy? Is this kind of the anarchist pick, right? We're hoping the guy's going to go in and destroy it, or what?
Dude, this is the I thought it was beautiful. The best thing was about 2 months ago, I was in Washington, D.C., and we got to tour the Department of Energy, literally. And there was somebody with a very, very fancy long title. I mean, like, it was so long, I didn't know what they did. So I basically asked them the question, and the government liaison was there. I was like, okay. So I asked them, from all these legislators from all these different states, okay, if I need to ask you for anything from my state, what would I ask you for? Because I still don't know what value you're bringing to the table. It was like a 5-minute answer, and then I looked around and half of us were laughing because they didn't answer that simple question. So there's the Department of Energy for you in a nutshell right there.
But they're here to help us. If you don't like the Department of Energy, you don't want poor people to have energy.
But literally, I still don't know. I understand the EPA. I wish that Perry would have been what's the name of the guy, the non-climate change guy.
Oh, yes, the guy he's like the climate change denier who's going to be the head of the EPA.
Yeah,
beautiful.
I thought that was
I love it.
Well, especially there's 50 states. Every state we have a Department of Environmental Quality (DEQ). There are 50 different states that have 50 different regulatory departments on the environment. And then we have another one. So if you're asking for a mine in Montana, because we have a lot of resources, palladium, silver, gold, bronze, whatever, coal, oil, gas, we got a lot. You need to get the approval of the state, which takes months, and there's all these processes, and then you got to go and get it from the federal government, which takes even longer sometimes. Like, why the redundancy? I'm a state guy. I think we should do things at the state level. We do not need redundancy at the federal level.
Great. All right. So last topic. I found this out about you today. I thought that was really interesting. You're an Uber driver.
Yeah, I signed up to drive. Yeah,
that's cool. And apparently, right. So there's a bill. Apparently, you had a bill that you worked on to try and make Uber in Montana legal. What was that all about?
So we had laws, I think, from the 1930s or 40s that basically put a monopoly on for taxis, because there were so few back then that they were a service. It was a utility, basically. There could only be one, or they'd run each other out of business. And those laws stayed in place for a very long time. So there was like 1 or 2 cabs per city or per region. So we had to change those laws to get Uber to come in. And I said, you know what, I would drive for it, and anything over profit that I made, I'd donate back. So it was just enough to like get some good exposure, try it out. So if they try to change the laws, I'd be like, no, I know how this works. I've seen the benefits. I've driven people home drunk and all these great things about it. It's funny because tomorrow in committee, because in the committee I'm chairing, I'm actually going to bring a bill to deregulate the taxis, because right now we brought in Uber, but the taxis have really high reporting standards because they were once monopolies. So we're going to take some of the laws away from them so they can compete better. I'm honestly either no one's friend or everybody's friend. I can't figure it out.
Well, Daniel, I gotta say, I'm honestly very impressed. You've got a great track record. Seems like you're a big up and comer. I gotta say, best of luck on this upcoming special election. I hope that this works out for you, and that we can see you fighting for liberty side by side with some of my heroes like Massey and Amash. But I guess my one last real quick question is for you is, where can our viewers find out more information about you and get involved in your campaigns?
So the easiest way to learn and learn about me is on my website, danielzolnikov.com. I do basically everything. I do also my social media. I'm on Twitter at danielzolnikov. There's going to be a theme here. My Facebook is facebook.com/danielzolnikov. With the last name Zolnikov, there's very little competition for Twitter handles and things like that. So that's really nice. I even have an Instagram, but that's a little less political and just me having fun all the time to show that I'm a human being. But the Facebook one is probably the best. I interact. I'm on there all the time. I mean, right after I get off this, I'll check it, and I do messages. I talk to as many people on my own as I can. I'm available.
Well, I'm very impressed, Daniel. Congratulations on all your successes. Keep up the fight for liberty, and we look forward to hearing a lot more about you in the future. Hope you have
Thank
a
you,
great
Austin. I really appreciate it. And hey, let me just throw one more thing out there. January 20th is the day we hear 3 Liberty bills in a committee in Montana of mine. One for a warrant for cell phones, one for a warrant for emails, and one to ban license plate readers. So,
all right, great. All right, and let me finish this, of course, with a plug. I wouldn't be a good capitalist if I didn't do so. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching right now and you enjoy the show, don't forget to come back every single day to your home for economic freedom and personal liberty at thelibertarianrepublic.com. And if you think that we should make taxation theft again, you can get one of these awesome hats at threadsofliberty.com. Daniel, thanks for coming on the show, and have a
thank you
great
for
night.
having me. Thank you.